difficult part is finding solutions. And I really feel that we're moving towards finding a solution, resolving an issue, which is going to take years, if not a generation to do.
I'm very curious about what they said to you. You told me you sent a letter and then they replied with action plans.
Mm-hmm.
What did they tell you?
Well, the other important thing in these relationships, and they are relationships. So NHJ is an association that is considered, rightfully so, as a watchdog. Right? We're watching and making sure T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and when an issue comes up, like Venezuela or others, we call them out on it. Now, I've always said it's not good enough to, wag your index finger and say, shame on you, look what you did to us, to the Latino community, you're bad. That's not good enough. What we have to do is extend a hand and say, listen, this is an issue. In a respectful way, I want to find out on behalf of the association, as best as you can convey, understanding that some of these issues are very private, what happened, and how can we be of assistance. So when you approach it that way, and that's how I approached it, I didn't say to them, wow, you haven't done a very good job covering the story. I admitted that my scope is limited because I'm not watching every network all the time since the crisis happened, but I have been listening to my colleagues' observations. I'm not forming an assumption based on that, but I'm listening, and based on listening to them and doing a little bit of my own research, I wanted to reach out to you to see how you're covering the story, because the perception is that you're not giving it as much attention as it's due. And from what I've seen, I would have to agree. So I'd like to hear from you about what you're doing, and also say, as we always have been, we're here to help. When you position it that way, people are much more open to speak to you, even though you're being constructively critical. I'm not out to, and NHJ is not out to embarrass anyone or attack anyone. We really are looking to problem solve, and in most cases, we're really trying to problem avoid. So when situations like this happen, and even before, I'll give you an example with, in the last couple of weeks, CNN Latino shut down, NBC Latino shut down. I reached out to them, and they to that leadership team, and they quickly responded back. I had a meeting with NBC and some of their leadership team at 30 Rock. I had a telephone conversation with the VP of Diversity for CNN, and again, they're open to speaking to us because they understand it is only to their benefit for us to sit through the fact versus fiction and get to the bottom of the story, so that then I can then share my conclusions with the members. And I'm honest with them, and I said to them, I can't. It is unfair to say CNN doesn't believe in Latinos. They just shut down CNN Latino after a year, when I can tell you in the past year how many Latinos have been hired at CNN in prominent roles. One member being promoted from an assignment desk editor position to a national correspondent. And then they shared with me the following week they were hiring another Latino from NHJ. So it's unfair for me to say CNN is not investing in Latinos and in diversity when I know that's happening. And understanding the decision making for shutting down CNN Latino, a lot of it is largely business related. The same thing with NBC Latino, understanding, okay, what was behind the decision, as much as you can share, what's happening to the people who are going to be displaced, that's also very important, and then understanding what their strategies are. NBC Latino, or NBC, really felt that it would be best served to shut down NBC Latino, a platform focused just on Latinos, and it was a sort of lifestyle, and have a section in their main site with that point of view. Now,
Love that idea, actually.
I agree with the idea.
Yeah.
One, it's going to get a larger audience, and two, as much as I believe there's a place for Latino-specific platforms in English, certainly in Spanish, but in English or bilingual, we're preaching to the choir. We have to preach to the masses. So if you're telling me NBC Latino is going to re-emerge as a tab in your main website prominently, then that is going to reach African Americans, Asians, Anglos, different age groups, a larger audience that could benefit from that point of view. There's no disagreement here. So again, none of that would happen if all we did was this and not did this. So they're very responsive, and even when we are constructively critical, because we continuously nurture the relationship and we have mutual respect, and it's not just a wagging finger, but really, an extended hand. And sometimes, and they'll admit it, we made a mistake. So we understand that whatever comes next is because of making a mistake, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
You talk about the importance of worrying about Latino journalists. What about how important is it to get the support from the other minority journalist organizations? And you maintaining relationships with NAHJ, AAJA, and other organizations too. Chinwe, she's our treasurer, but she's also the student president of the NAHJ chapter here. So we try to look for ways to collaborate. What are the benefits of that, and how do we kind of make sure we stay together despite all the issues we each face separately?
I think it's the quick answer is it's hugely important. As minority journalists, we have a lot of things in common that we don't have in common. Of course, we have points of view that are very unique, but we all kind of are marching in the same direction. And I think anytime that we can work together, there's strength in numbers. We sometimes there's a specific issue that affects African Americans that while it doesn't affect Latinos, we can support them because they're a member of our family. The same thing with Asians, with women, with gay and lesbians, with the Native Americans. We are part of a larger family of journalists. So we live in the same neighborhood. And then we're minority journalists, and then we have even more things in common. So whether, and in these trying economic times, it is important to work together so that we're growing judiciously from a solid foundation. And so, for example, next month, NAHJ has its first regional conference in San Francisco, and that market naturally lended us the opportunity to reach out to the gay and lesbian group and to the Asian American group and saying, why don't you join us? Help us with the programming, be a platform to promote your local chapter and what you're doing nationally, and it'll enrich that conference. We're doing the same with in Las Vegas with SPJ, and they're not an ethnic association. In San Antonio, we're working with a local Latino group, journalism group, but we're also inviting IRE and other journalism organizations to be part of the programming, to have ownership of it, because we understand that diversity is not just diversity, ethnic diversity. It has to be diversity of thought. And so that's why it's very important not only to work with other minority journalism associations, but other journalism associations in general that have specific focus and expertise. It will only benefit our members. It will only benefit our association. We had a wonderful experience at last year's national conference with EIJ, and we were with RTDNA and SPJ, so much so that we're going to join them again in 2015.
Yay!
So it's very important for us
Is
to
that
work
breaking
together.
news, or everybody knows that already?
I announced it last week and then last month. So.
Oh, okay, so it's not breaking news.
It's not breaking news.
You didn't break it here at the CUNY-NAHJ school.
I didn't break it here.
Okay, all right.
I broke it here in New York, maybe, just in New York.
Okay, well.
You gonna break the NABJ NHJ joint convention?
You know, we're working on that really
What's
hard.
going on with that?
So we NABJ just hired a new executive director.
Oh, we got so much to talk about.
Oh, really?
Maurice is home?
Yeah,
I know,
Last
we got to talk. Okay.
last month. So,
I'm sorry.
so-
Okay.
so a lot of breaking news going on right here,
Yes, right
You
here.
gotta talk more often. You gotta talk more often.
Yeah, we do.
So our executive directors are talking. My hope is that by April, when the NAHJ National Board meets, we'll have more information about 2016, and hopefully by the national conference at NABJ, which is in July in Boston, we'll be able to make an announcement. I'm in favor of a joint conference in 2016. I think it would be a wonderful event for journalists, not just for African American and Latinos, but for all journalists. And it will be in an important time in our country's history where we're going to be electing a new president. Certainly the first African American president is stepping down. So, you know, there'll be a lot of change. And Latinos, as they impacted the 2012 election, will certainly have a greater influence in 2016. So I hope to see us either in Washington, D.C. or in a battleground state.
What can we do as students? I know you guys are handling the national front, but here in New York City, what can we do to kind of help promote that and like that kind of collaboration?
Well, I think you're continue to work on projects where you can be inclusive of other associations, but in particularly for the 2016 conference is how the NAHJ works is similarly apples and oranges, but how the government works, right? So we have a national board that consists of regional directors. Yvette Davida, which I know is a regional 2 director. You've got your local representation in the New York City professional chapter, and of course you have the student chapter as well. It's important that when you meet, as you discuss things and projects that you work locally, that you also keep national in mind. We work for you, and decisions that we make are in large part due to the feedback that you guys provide. So it's very important, beginning with Yvette, but also for the area chapters, to lend their support for that, to be very vocal in your meetings, through social media, in any consistent communication that you send out to your members. The more the board hears there's favor for this or anything, the more open they're going to be to vote in favor of it. A lot of times my job is to convince them to go in a direction. And the best resource that I have in having an influence and then voting towards any decision is when I can say, this is what our membership is in favor of. And these are the reasons why we should make this decision. So I could use all that.